Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, David Kennedy. Our topic now is cryptocurrency. Now, if you don't follow that market slavishly, then terms like halving, crypto ETFs, or the abbreviation FTX may not mean a lot to you. But you may know that the most popular coin is worth half of what it was at its peak, and that every now and then its value surges. Now, my next guest, whose trading platform allows people to trade in crypto as well as currencies and stocks, Adrian Zduńczyk, is here to give some sense to recent news, both fake and otherwise. Adrian, thank you very much for joining me.
Great to be here, thank you.
Now, we'll start first of all. I have to have a big caveat because whatever we talk about here, the value of financial instruments goes up and down. And that's something that you do on your platform, isn't it? You talk about education of people who are investing.
Correct, you're very right. I couldn't agree more. So the markets, we're speaking of making any sense whatsoever. The only issue is that markets are very chaotic and they very rarely ever make any sense, right? So making sense out of something that doesn't make sense too much or too often is a big of a challenge, which basically transpires to why we help people navigate and educate about the proper, correct license approach to educated decisions in terms of the markets.
Exactly. Now, Bitcoin, it had its massive surge. People sitting at home, maybe with some lockdown money, invested greatly in the instrument. It went way up, and then it went way down. Now we're talking about something called halving in Bitcoin. Now, people hear this term not necessarily knowing what it's about. And I must admit, the more I read about it, the less I fully get it. So tell us what happens with a halving in Bitcoin.
Correct. Isn't that the philosophy of education, right? The more we learn, the less we know. Isn't that right? So
yes.
Regarding halving, or some people would rather call this halvening, what it does is that it operates within the blockchain, the chain of blocks, right? This is a transmission of data of certain amount.
I don't understand that already. So the chain of blocks.
Yeah. So we send certain amount of information in blocks and packages, right? Okay. And these packages just move like one, another, and another, and another, and they just move in chain, right? It's like a train, if you will. Train loaded with cargo, it's like a block of chains, basically moving with certain amount of information. Then the information is digital.
Okay.
Right? And every certain amount of blocks, it's up. This time it's going to be approximately. It will be actually 210,000 blocks of in the blockchain. Every this amount of blocks, there is this halving event. Now that is programmed. That is written in the code of Bitcoin.
Okay, but hold on. Well, let's go back a little step. Yeah.
Correct.
So for Bitcoin, yeah. It is mined, yeah, which
Correct.
means that you have all these guys sitting behind the scenes trying to sort of create codes, yeah, and the return that they get for that is halved each time, yeah?
That's very right. So this amount of blocks, every 210,000 blocks, the halving rewards, just like you mentioned, for those who actually mine it. For those who process the transactions, it is halved, right? Which basically means that every approximately 4 years, it rounds up to about 4 years, it gets more and more difficult to mine the same amount of Bitcoin. It gets more and more expensive, difficult. There's bigger competition between those same people who want to mine and create those blocks.
Bigger computers, more energy, and all that.
Correct.
Now, what effect does that have on the market? Some people are saying now, and remember our caveat, yeah?
Correct.
The things go up and down, yeah? But some people are saying that whenever there's a halving, then the value of the coins go up Does that always happen, or have people been disappointed sometimes?
Right on. So again, I would always try to stay away from the words like always or never, right? just maybe because the markets, like I said, do not necessarily operate on logical terms, right? There's very much, especially in Bitcoin, where it's not necessarily backed by one company, which is not centralized. Now, it tends to undergo a lot of behavioral mistakes that we all do when we feel overconfident or where we fear of making certain decisions, loss aversion. So altogether, that transpires to a lot of anticipation towards this event the halving is. At this moment, it is estimated that next halving is in April, the fourth halving is in April 2024, which right before tends to lead to a lot of anticipation, which builds up the I think the whole speculation thing, and people, in order to speculate, they need to buy an asset, right? So when they speculate on the asset, they probably want to own it, which is why a lot of basically times prices tend to go up towards the anticipation, towards the event. There's this so-called heuristic, this rule of thumb called buy the rumor, sell the news.
Yes.
Right. So at times this is kind of like a short-term solution towards the event. However, I think that more importantly, speaking of facts, and instead of forecasting the future, speaking of facts, something that already had happened, Bitcoin had always rallied big after the halving events, right? We are talking about 9,000% growth towards the subsequent peak. We are talking about 3,000% growth, and then 700% on the latest peak. Now,
okay, so that's a big kind of possibility there, but at the same time, we've got all kinds of things happening. I mean, we've got the FTX trial, which is happening at the moment. Now, this was a guy, Sam Friedman, who was a guru essentially.
You're right.
Who talked to presidents and talk to, the tech champions, etc., and then it turns out that he's a fraudster, and that all the money people were putting into Bitcoin on his platform was being stolen and invested somewhere else. Now, can we really say that it is properly safe to put your money in these platforms? Now, I'm not saying your platform, but these platforms overall.
Correct. So I think there is a lot of, it's important to disassociate the investment and education, right? What we do is to educate people. However, trading platforms like FTX, the exchange, when they exchange the currencies, for instance, this is where a lot of hacks had happened, just like a person or a hacker can actually hack your bank account, right? Just like you probably get a lot of phishing attempts that would try, somebody would try to call you and introduce themselves that they are the bank broker, that they are your banker, right? There are lots of different types of scams that basically we may, just experience every single day. And one of them happened basically to an exchange called FTX, right? And the deeper the investigation goes, the more staggering issues had been discovered, basically, right? Because just like you mentioned, the big amount of money of the client's money that were at the time on the exchange was actually used to fund the political parties in the United States Congress.
It's shocking, right? Isn't it? Now the question is, so people make up their own mind whether they're going to invest in this or any other product, but what should they look out for? And because there are ways that, you can even have your Bitcoin on your own disk, your own hard drive or whatever, can't you? What do you advise?
Correct. So I think the simplest approach is the common sense approach. The common sense approach suggests so that you do not often put all your eggs in one basket. That's the most popular saying, and it's actually true to the core, right? There is not a safe haven place that is always going to protect you, basically protect your money. There is always a risk. Even the banks fail, just like the Silicon Valley Bank this year. The banks fail, the exchanges fail. Even if you wanted to put all your cash in one, let's call it socket or a bag, somebody can always come and pickpocket that from you, right?
Yes.
So there is always a risk associated with any sort of decision or movement with our money. So probably diversification is the keyword, right? Okay. Diversifying as in not keeping all your eggs in one basket, not keeping all your Bitcoins in one place, in one exchange, in one hardware, just like you said, wallet.
Because some people had their codes in their laptops, which then got thrown away, and then they're trying to find their laptops in rubbish dumps. There is a case
That's
like
correct.
that as well. So,
You're right.
So it's not just that diversification may be the key there. Now, I want to move on to another aspect of this, because there are these rumors about crypto ETFs. Now, an ETF is a fund which you don't actually buy the asset, but you kind of get a share in the asset somehow, yeah? Now,
Correct.
And you can do this for shares, but every so often there's a rumor it's going to be allowed on the US stock market. There's been a lot of that kind of rumor merchant things going on this week, haven't there?
That's very right. You're right.
Is it going to happen, do you think, first of all?
Well, it's probably not so much of what I think, right? It's probably it's more about what is really happening in the
Yes.
processing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, right? And there are a lot of undergoing, again, filings, applications that are being processed, right? And the application process, again, it may get rejected several times. However, it's just a matter of communication between an institution and an authority. So eventually it's just a matter of time, because the demand is there, right? We're talking about the biggest world's funds, such as BlackRock, right? And Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. When the biggest players are getting interested, it means it's not random, right? There has to be demand for it. There has to be the clients literally begging and trying to call for the action to get the Bitcoin investment anyhow.
Okay.
And that can be happening with the ETFs.
So if the ETFs are allowed, then that may also influence the value of Bitcoin. And but some people are using it to create surges in Bitcoin by saying, yes, it's happening, or no, it's happening. I've been caught out by these things myself. If you have to be very careful. What do you advise people who are looking for those kind of signs?
Correct. So as a chartered market technician, my job is to make sure that people get the right education, the right honest take, right? And the right honest take is probably to invest the most amount of money in education, to invest and buy books in order to become better at trading, for instance, right? So there is not a single way to ever predict which sort of like a media outlet, just like the one that you're calling, what they do, right? If there's ever a worker, an employee, an employer that is basically going to take the opportunity out of the whole establishment, out of the whole company, to use it to fakely and falsely pump and dump Bitcoin, which happened the last week.
Pump and dump, maybe some booms, maybe some busts. And Adrian Zduńczyk, founder of the Birb Nest, thanks very much for trying to give us a little bit of clarity here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And that's all we've got time for the moment on World Talks, but stay with us, we've got more coming up.